Welcome to Scaling with People, your weekly playbook for turning chaos into compounding growth. Each week, we go under the hood with battle-tested experts in all areas of business, from marketing to sales, operation, finance, and people, plus product and leadership, to unpack the plays, numbers, and systems that turn chaos into compounding growth. Learn straight from founders and experts who've done it and continue to do it successfully. There's zero fluff, just moves that you can steal immediately. This podcast is brought to you by Guide to HR, human expertise, AI-powered impact. Welcome, everyone, to today's Scaling with People podcast. I'm Guinevere Curry, your host and founder and CEO to Guide to HR. All right, buckle up, founders, because today we're talking about a triple threat that can make or break your startup. Hiring, culture, and okay, hold on, guys, where the heck your team should actually work. Yes, I'm talking about the RTO. Our guest, Khairallah, has seen the inside of enough rocket ships to know exactly where founders screw this up. Okay, I said that. You know who I'm talking about. I'm calling you all out, and how to fix it. From hiring misfires that stall momentum to culture myths that need to die already, to finally making sense of the remote versus hybrid versus in-office chaos. Oh my gosh, I'm already triggered. Nahed's bringing clarity, strategy, and a whole lot of truth. Okay, guys, if you're ready for this, let's dive in. Nahed, welcome. I'm already getting anticipated goosebumps here, but before we start talking, tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. You have me fired up already, so I'm I'm ready to go. So yeah, a little bit about me. So I've been in the HR space for the past 15 years. Been helping companies scale from 7 to 9 figures. Have done it in the US, Europe, Middle East, and Africa. Have worked with over 150 companies over my career, so a long track record. Have done it as a consultant, also done it as in-house. And I've helped companies really solve a lot of problems that impede their scaling, from their culture to hiring the right people to where they work and a lot of things around that. So I've been doing this for such a long time, and I've seen a lot of successes, a lot of failures. And hopefully in the conversation today we can help founders and any business lead really understand some of the things that they might be doing today that could hurt them in the future, things that they potentially don't even recognize at this point. And maybe try to share some of the learnings I've had with these 150 plus companies over the years, and help them give shortcuts really on how to get past some things that could really hurt their organization.
Yeah, exactly. And you and I are so in line with all of that. We're very similar in what we do and offer. So, okay, let's get into this, because I'm not going to be a tease like the news and tell you what they're going to tell you and then keep telling you before they actually get there. Let's just talk about it. RTO. Trigger. I should actually put a trigger warning on this podcast, right? Whatever your stance is, you can go out and find articles and data points to prove you're right on any side. So I'm curious, what is your perspective?
Yeah, so I love that question, and it's to your point. It's such a debate because you can contextualize the data towards any argument based on how
Oh,
you
yeah.
look at it, right? And if anyone who understands data very well, data is really going to be conceived based on the context you put around it.
Oh,
The
yeah.
same information can change meaning depending on the context you look at it from and the inputs you bring in. So my stance, so I'm going to start with my stance, but also what I've seen work versus not work. My main stance is that we're having the wrong conversation about whether it's actually RTO or hybrid in office. What I usually guide companies on is that forget that question. Start with, how do we need to work as an organization? What do we need to be doing day in and
Love
day out
that.
that helps us achieve our goals, right? And when you start having that kind of conversation, the way in which you work and where you work becomes an extension of that. You don't start by saying, I want everyone in office and then we'll figure things out, or we want to be remote and then we figure things out. There are pros and cons to each model, and it depends on if it fits for your organization. Is going to depend on what are the things that are going to help you move forward versus the things that can hold you back. I'll give you a small example here. If you're an organization that needs global talent and wants to optimize on cost of talent or even global exposure, then you're automatically discarding in office, right? It's a non-starter because that model on its own doesn't allow you to be global and be very efficient as a startup, right? If you're an organization that is delivering an in-person service where that is only where it could happen, then you're eliminating the remote aspect. So for me, that's where the conversation is. How do we need to operate as an organization? How do we need to deliver value to our customers? And where can we do that the best way? And that is where the discussion moves forward.
Okay, so Nahid, I think this is exactly the right approach. What is best for the business? What does the business need? And what is going to be the right way to work to end up getting to those goals you're looking for? And you're calling out like the global workforce, even cost effectiveness versus in-house. And I also find that the hybrid style is very challenging because I find founders feel like, oh, that's a good compromise, right? I get the people in the office, they get a little bit of flexibility, but, or I should say, however, that doesn't necessarily solve for what the business needs.
Yeah, the hybrid is an interesting one because a hybrid, to your point, it's sort of this compromise model that is a little bit of this, a little bit of that, but not all the way there kind of thing. Look, my take on hybrid is that a hybrid only makes sense if you have the operating infrastructure and ways of working that make sense of it. So where companies have gone wrong with hybrid is that they have tried to transplant what people were doing remotely during COVID and brought it back to the office. Like I have actually seen companies force people into the office where they ended up actually getting on Zoom calls.
Yeah.
What are you doing? Right? I mean, you just found a more expensive way of doing something you were doing remotely. Like,
Mm-hmm.
congratulations, you're burning cash. Good for you. There's the other model that I've seen also where with hybrid. I mean, I saw this with I'm not going to mention who the company is because I've worked with that company, but this was a large company, around 1,000 people, right? They're pretty large from a startup perspective, pretty growing pretty quickly. They started bringing people into the office and mandating, that 3 days in the office and so
Mm-hmm.
forth. They didn't even have enough desks in the company for the people coming in.
Yes.
So
Yep.
the
Been there
the
and done
thing with
that too.
the thing with hybrid is that you need to be very, very specific and very intentional about what are the things that you can do very well in a remote environment that you necessarily need to do in office and in person that are more efficient, that give you more better value, but also the compromise of coming in office actually outweighs doing it remotely. There
Yeah.
needs to be always this prioritization. And this becomes an exercise of very nitty-gritty focus on really just dissecting everything you do as a company. And I focus on what are the value chains in your organization? What are the things you do in the company that add value either to your product, to your service, to your customer? Because if you're forcing people to come in to do things which don't add any value, you're not doing yourself a service. So
Right.
hybrid for me, it needs to be very deliberate. It's the reason this has become a compromise or even coming back to office is this legacy and archaic mentality of leaders wanting to see people actually working to believe that
Mm-hmm.
they're actually working. It's
Yep.
this old mentality of, clock in, clock out, and if I don't see you working means you're not adding value, which is really not realistic in today's knowledge-based economy anymore.
Exactly. I mean, in my past history, I've known plenty of people who clock in and clock out and probably give you 20 minutes of productivity. And yet the people at home are giving you 10 hours of productivity, right? So just
Exactly.
because you see them doesn't mean you're getting anything out of them. I also find that the struggle is how you treat people fairly and equally. I have a customer right now who is going through all this and, working with some of the hiring managers. I've actually had one hiring manager who's like, it is so not fair that I'm seeing that we're hiring these people all over the place. And yet I'm being told I can only hire in office. Why am I not allowed to hire the same way that other leaders are? Right. And so being very distinct, very clear on what is that? I mean, for that instance, salespeople, they can work anywhere. They're flying around, they're
Mhm.
driving around, they're going to customers. So who cares where they're at? Because they wouldn't even be in the office if they're there in the first place, right? And so
Exactly.
being
You don't
very
want them in the office.
clear, right? If you're in the office, you're probably not doing your job too much, right? I mean, I obviously you got to do your leads and all that kind of stuff and follow it, but being very clear and transparent with your leaders at all levels, right? All hiring managers on why we've made this exception for this group of people, but for the rest of the org, it's not. That's where the communication piece is so important to make sure everyone feels like they're being treated fairly and equally and
Yeah.
understanding why you have an outlier and why it's best for the business.
Yeah, and I'll add to that something that, and this is a case I've seen also with many companies I've worked with, is when you want this kind of separation between which role actually needs to be in office versus not, you need to be very clear on why is the case. Like you need to have a very rock solid case and be transparent about it. Because if there are components of a job that only can be done in office to be done effectively and in a manner that is satisfactory, then you need to be very clear up front with it and be very specific as to why it is the way it is. And also, be very transparent about it and clearly separate that from other roles. But also, you need to keep in mind that in a company where there's a hybrid, to sort of eliminate that feeling of, we're not being treated the same way or we don't have the same opportunities, you need to also factor in a lot of other things, right? Like, how are you compensating remote roles versus in-office roles? And we know what are the perks you're granting here and there? And how are you actually going to level the playing field between those roles to make sure you're also providing a consistent employee experience, regardless
Yeah.
of where they are? So there's a lot of things that come into play as well. But yeah, you need to start from a place of transparency and clarity.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of leaders, founders, CEOs, leaders out there that are looking at in office, hybrid, remote, you got to also think about the fact that you create that structure, communicate it, be consistent, be clear, right? Because at the end of the day, if there is a perception that certain roles or certain people are, not being treated equally, and I could say, whether it's gender, it's age, it's, race, whatever it might be, you could end up having a perception of discrimination in your
Yep,
org that you didn't even mean to create. And
exactly.
I tell founders all the time, perception is what matters the most when it comes to employees and how they're going to interact and engage in your company, how they're going to produce, what they're saying on Glassdoor, which it can impact your company, not only at the employee level, but at your customer level too. I've worked with CEOs where, the first thing they want me to work on is that because they are having potential customers tell them they don't want to work with them because of what's on Glassdoor. Right. And
Yeah,
all we're
yeah.
talking about is whether someone should be in office or not. And all of a sudden, here we are impacting your revenue.
Exactly. I mean, you hit it on the head there because when you start from a position of subjectivity and vagueness, and this to me is the biggest problem with the whole RTO debate, is that regardless of all the data that's there, and I challenge any company, and I've worked with a lot of them. I will challenge any company that mandated return to office to show me proof that it actually made them better, or it actually resulted in better revenue by isolating specifically that change, right? Not because
Mhm.
some market dynamics happened or they got acquired or something. Um, there are none because
Yeah.
a lot of it has been pure subjective opinion from whoever's the decision maker. Hey, I want people back in the office and it's going to happen. Or I want
Right.
people to stay remote, it's going to happen. There is
Mhm.
no evidence today that tells you one model is absolutely better than the other. It's all contextual, it's all based on what your business needs to succeed. But when this whole situation around, hey, let's come back to the office, which happened randomly overnight from companies who actually committed to staying remote, right?
Yeah.
It was mind blowing because it showed when you commit to doing something, then you reverse very quickly. It clearly states you don't know what you're doing and you're not basing your
Mhm.
opinions and decisions on fact. You're basing it on opinion. Opinion is not fact. Opinion
Right.
backed up with data becomes fact, which is what we're lacking here. So for me, this whole debate of RTO and it's just flawed just because the questions and the conversations are not happening where they need to. It's really about optimizing the model for your work and for your company. It shouldn't matter to you if all of your competitors are in office or not. It's about
Yeah.
what works for your business and how you structure work in a way that optimizes the use of whatever model you're going to choose.
I'd even challenge that if, a founder or leader is saying, oh, well, because everyone else in my industry is doing that, so should I. Why don't you differentiate yourself? Man, like
Exactly.
you could be the differentiator in your industry, and maybe they're all remote, and that means you need to go in office. I don't know. I'm not saying one way or the other, but differentiate yourself. that could be the key to opening your business up for some major skill coming through the door, because they
Oh
don't
yeah,
want the opposite of your what everyone's doing in the industry, right? It could
100%.
even open the door for your potential customers and revenue too. So I always want to say, when I hear a CEO say, well, I've talked to some other CEOs or founders and this is what they're doing, so we're going to do this. I'm just like, oh my gosh, no, like that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be good for your business. Like, it's fine. Go talk to others, learn from others, hear from others, but then put that in a place where, okay, now let me put on my business lens.
Hmm.
What is best for my business? Where am I trying to take my business? And I go back to what you said. What is going to work? How do we work at this company to execute on those goals to get to that story that I need to go and sell to the investors, or that that we need to have before we can IPO successfully or sell successfully, whatever the end result is you're trying to get to,
Yeah,
and really think backwards on that. Yeah.
exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. So I think that I love that mindset, and I'm gonna steal that from you. Okay, so now that we're over that hot topic, I'd like to dive in more with you about like the hiring mishires, because this is another area where I think, especially as young founders, maybe someone who hasn't ever run a business at a CEO level, maybe has been a leader in their past life, maybe not, but they're a founder now. They're needing to scale their team. They're needing to hire people. I see so many times when I come in, a founder saying, "Oh, I've mishired in this role so many times. I don't know what to do about it."
Yeah.
So I'd love to get your take on maybe a couple things that founders and listeners can take away to help not have a mishire. And I know that's a broad topic, right? But love to get your take on it.
No, I appreciate it. And I can focus on a few big ones that I see really almost every single time. Because yeah,
Oh yeah,
there's a
let's do
laundry
that.
list of them, but there's a lot of them which
The
I,
books that you
without
and I could
fail,
write.
exactly, exactly. But without fail, there is a group of things that I see every time. So first off, like let's take a step back here. First off, hiring in the early days of a company is a little more organic than as you start growing a little bit. Like once you surpass that 20 to 25 person mark, hiring becomes a little different because initial early stage companies, if you look at the team generally, it ends up being from founders networks, people they went to
Yes.
college with, friends, so
Even
forth.
friends and family, which obviously gets a
Exactly.
little dicey
I mean,
as
yeah,
you
exactly,
grow.
exactly, exactly. I mean, there's the good ones and there's the bad ones, and depends on how you approach it, right? But in most cases, what happens is that um, there's a relationship that has been built. There's a foundation of trust which is there, and to some extent, they know what to expect. And there's some passion about the organization, what it's doing, and everyone's wearing multiple hats to the point where you're not focusing way too much on one thing they're doing and so forth. So
Hmm.
you get by, and the goal is really survivability and just getting on the map in the beginning. When
Yeah.
hiring starts becoming a bit of a chore for founders is really when once they start hiring people that they don't know anything about, right? They're trying to fill gaps and capabilities that they just don't have with their internal team. The biggest thing I see typically as a mistake is that founders run towards hiring whenever they feel overwhelmed by anything that they don't understand or think that they're not equipped or their team is equipped to do. The first thing they think of is, let's go get someone. And
Hmm.
typically it happens with a sense of urgency to where they try to cut a lot of corners. And what do I
Hmm.
mean by that? The sense of urgency, I call this like the false sense of urgency, because a lot of times founders, they are so excited about what they're doing. And to them, every second, every minute is so critical, where they equate leaving a vacant position open for any extra day is a disaster. This is going to tank the business. And I understand where they're coming from, because ideally, when you're a small organization, every role, you need Michael Jordans in every role. Because
Hmm.
if not, then it's going to be very difficult to move forward. You need to be super efficient and super surgical and super effective. So they go out and rush through hiring, and they cut through stages, meaning they don't vet people properly. They don't take the time to actually articulate what is this role actually going to be doing beyond the next 3 months,
Yes.
right? Because I see a lot of short-sightedness with hiring initially. So there's hasty hiring, there's the short-sightedness of the role's viability and why it exists. So
Yeah.
a lot of times where I see founders jump onto hires very quickly, there's a short shelf life for the position that could have been filled maybe by a consultant or a fractional person as opposed to a full-time role. Um, So the other thing I see as well with founders early on is that they change what they're looking for mid process all the time.
Oh my gosh,
And
second trigger.
right.
So true.
So
Oh my gosh.
when I
Yes,
see
like
that,
80
when I
plus
see
percent
that,
of the time.
oh yeah, when I see that happening, my advice usually is, okay, stop hiring completely.
Yeah.
Because the reason I say this is because if you are exhibiting this behavior, it is clear you're not sure what you're looking for, right? Not only on who's the best person or persona for this role, you don't know what you're hiring for to begin with. Like, what is this role going to be doing here? Because this comes from a few places. One is you didn't take enough time to understand what your business needs and where this position fits into the grander scheme of things, but also you haven't spent enough time to determine what is the best who is the best candidate in terms of skill set, but also in terms of culture fit and personality and so forth that fits this role. When you're switching your that checklist of requirements you're looking for, and it changes with every interview, with every candidate you see, and whenever one other person on your team talks to someone, they change your opinion, or it changes the entire nature of the role. It means you're not ready to hire because you
Yeah.
haven't taken the time to do that. um
Yeah. And let me just
this-
add a little bit to that because
sure.
I've lived that so many times as well. And I think the reality is like some a lot of founders, I just have to go fast. I just have to go fast. I have to go fast. And what I hope that the founders listening take this away. Sometimes slowing down actually allows you to move faster
Hmm.
because you aren't making so many missteps. And at the end of the day, month, 3 months later, you're in the right place instead of still like having the wrong person in play or having taken too much time to like hire this person and that doesn't work, bring on another person. So slow down. It does actually let you move faster in the long run.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. You pointed out something interesting because if you make a mishire, think of the impact it has when that role just doesn't work out. Not only are we talking about the cost of hiring, like the dollars itself, but when you're a small organization, sub 50, sub 100 employees, even sometimes, every person who leaves takes a chunk of knowledge with them. You
Mm-hmm.
haven't already set in stone processes and knowledge management, strategies and so forth, where every person who leaves, bringing someone else in and having and really ramping them up to where they need to be is such a time suck for everyone involved, given you already have
Yeah.
limited resources. So it's derailing your entire roadmap, generally
Yeah.
speaking.
And
So that
actually
it has
could
to be very
create a
deliberate.
roadmap that is sending you in the wrong direction. That when they
Yes,
do hire the replacement, they have to spend time blowing that up and starting all over again instead of just
exactly.
having a fresh slate. And let me also add, it takes away your reputation as a leader because now your employees feel this yo-yo effect of I have a new manager. No, I don't. We have new direction. No, we don't. And it just like it eats away, erodes your leadership persona, and ultimately that could actually lead to retention issues for that particular department or even beyond, right? Because your employees, no matter what department they're in, they see those hires, they see them, especially when you're like you said, sub 100, even like I'd say sub 2 or 300 employees see it.
Yeah.
And I mean, you gotta it has such a ripple effect when you have this mishire.
Agreed, agreed. And last thing I'll add into the whole hiring thing is that one very common mistake I see is that the whole hiring process and actual interviewing is random. What I mean by that is that if you're hiring, let's say, for a business development manager, every candidate will go through maybe a different kind of process, talk to different kind of people, even be asked different kind of questions or even tested on different things. That is not comparing apples to apples. If
Mm-hmm.
your goalpost is moving throughout the process on what you're doing and how you're doing it, like how are you evaluating fit?
Yeah.
If that is changing with every candidate, means that, well, again, you're not sure what you're looking for, but also you're setting yourself up for failure. Anytime I see a process like this, it's like winning the lottery if you actually find a good candidate using that.
Yeah.
So
And then
those
you
are
add
some
in
very
the
common things I see.
location, right? If you're in
Oh
office
man.
or hybrid, you add in what you can afford versus what this person is expecting or requiring, and you're just
Yes.
like in a world of hurt. Okay, so now we've talked about the problem. I'd love to talk about some of the ways that leaders can think about how, if they're seeing, okay, I'm in this situation. How do I get myself out? What's like one or two things that they could do to either not get in this situation, or if they find themselves in this, to get themselves out of it?
Yeah, very good question. So the first thing that there's one piece of advice that solves most of this stuff that I give folks really because they're all interconnected in hiring, right? It's all really a snowball effect. If you start off wrong by not understanding why this role exists and who you're looking for, the whole thing's a
Yeah.
mess. So the first piece of advice I give to people is that as a founder, first off, identify who are the stakeholders in the organization, right? Those key people that are integral to this role's success and who will interface with that role very frequently. Work with that team to define first what is this job doing, which we call the job description, right? But also, I take it a step further. Identify which value chain processes and things that you do as an organization that they will touch and what is their specific role in there. Are they accountable? It's like think of a RACI chart,
Yeah.
for example, right? What are they going to be held accountable for? What does success look like for them? And how are we going to be able to identify success when we see it versus failure
Hmm.
when we see it?
Absolutely.
Those are things people usually think of after the fact
Yeah.
of hiring, right?
Yep.
For me, you need to start with these before you even advertise a role for hiring.
Yeah.
Because if you're not clear on those things, you're again, it's going to be a coin toss or like winning the lottery if you find the right person. For me, I think these are the baseline things you need to do as a founder. And only when you're clear on those things are you able to actually have a chance of hiring successfully because
Yeah.
those inputs and that information is going to determine everything else you do in the process. It's going to be the anchor point for you to actually look back on and anchor what's going on in the interview process if you're doing, let's say, on the job testing, case study, small project, whatever you want to do with someone, to evaluate their fitness on a technical and behavioral level, you have something to anchor to. And not only yourself as a founder, but anyone who's involved in the process. That becomes the source of truth. So we are all looking to benchmark any candidates we talk to that standard we've set. Now, there are cases where, especially when you're an early company, you might be describing a unicorn that maybe does not exist. But during that process, you can identify what are the must-haves versus the good-to-haves versus the things that, hey, if all the stars aligned, I would love to have. But you also set yourself up for success because you know what are the things that you will just not give up versus the
Yeah.
things that you're wishing to you are able to live without and things you can grow over time. That
Yeah.
I think is the single piece of advice I give to every founder that really resolves most of their problems when it comes to hiring. And it just minimizes the failure rate tremendously because you're starting from that common point of truth as opposed to, just randomizing it and just, seeing just go with the flow and see who we find.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd add to that too. I mean, you talked about two things. One is a founder typically, especially initially hiring some leaders and some people, they're probably doing so in a way where that's not my subject matter expertise. That's not what I should be working on. I don't have any experience there. So let me go out and get someone that does. I don't know what they need to do because I don't know, right? So
Yep.
take that moment and bring in a specialist, bring in an advisor or a interim or fractional or a consultant to help you and learn what you need for your business and help you actually create that job description, right? Because even if you go to the team, I think that is absolutely right. Go to the team, but some of those team members might also be young enough in their career that they don't know
Yeah.
what a leader should be doing or what good looks like. So take that moment and opportunity to spend a little more time, spend some money, and get it right the first time around. And then even bring that person in that you've hired as a technical interviewer. They're the subject matter experts. I don't know anything about marketing that, except what I've learned from my own business. So if I was to interview a marketing person, they could say anything and I would think it sounds great. But if I have an expert who's interviewing that leader and knows those are just buzzwords and how to dive deeper to see if this person actually knows what they're doing and how to execute on it, then you're going to find someone that's stronger for your business.
No, 100%. And that's something like when you said that just triggered in my mind that a lot of the customers I worked with that were growing, and once they sort of grew out of like the fractional or consulting thing and they needed a full-time person, I was usually the first person they thought of to sit on these interviews and help them, articulate that too, because to your
Yeah.
point, they don't know that stuff to the level of depth that someone like you or me does, but they could use our advice in helping them find the right person. But at the end of the day,
Mhm.
there are some elements that they're going to know better than we do. But from a technical standpoint of who has the baseline requirements to actually succeed in the job from an HR standpoint, yeah. And same thing for other roles. 100%
Yeah.
agree with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think we could probably chat all day about this. We obviously love what we do, but Nahid, anything else you want to share with the audience before we wrap up today?
I mean, one last thing I will say on the culture piece, because yeah, hiring is great, and as long as you get it right, that's amazing. But also where you work's important. But culture is one of the things I see fall off a cliff sometimes as companies grow. And a lot of it stems from founders and the founding team thinking that, well, culture is now the responsibility of HR once we have someone in HR, or
Yes.
the responsibility of someone else. No, it actually becomes more of your responsibility because you are the anchors of that culture. You're the ones who drive it. You're the ones who live it. If it doesn't start with you, if you outsource that to someone else or you delegate it, it's not going to work. So that is what I tell founders all the time is your goal as you grow is you want to hire yourself out of a like day-to-day tactical job,
Hmm.
but the people side of things become such an integral part of your success. And you will learn that the hard way if you don't do that early on.
Yeah.
You will see. I've seen this many times where people have actually been the failure of companies, not their product or finance or anything else. It is the
Mm.
people side of things that have led to their demise.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll always focus on that part. Don't think that you can delegate this and just forget about it. Let's just bring in an HR person and they'll handle it. It's
Yeah.
always going to be a part of your mandate and is actually going to grow over time.
Yeah, it's kind of like when you think about you're building your business, customers, clients, whatever you call them, are coming because of you and what you're selling and how you're selling it and who you are because of what you believe and what you're building. It's the same thing on the employee front. They're being hired because of what you believe in and your passion, what you've created, and they want to be a part of that. And if you start to get farther away from them, it's going to cause hardship for your business for sure.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I feel like, again, we could talk about this all day long, but thank you, listeners, for joining us. I hope that you got something out of it. If you did, leave a comment, follow, subscribe, join us on the next call, and we'll see you next time. Thanks so much, everyone. That's a wrap for today's episode of Scaling with People. If you got value from this conversation, do me a favor, share it with someone building something big. And hey, I'd love to hear your take. Drop a comment, shoot me a message, or start a conversation. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss the bold, unfiltered strategies we drop every week. I'm Guinevere Query, founder and CEO of Guide to HR, where we help high-growth companies scale smart with people-first strategies and AI-powered systems that don't just keep up, they lead. If you're building fast and want your HR to move faster, head to guidetohr.com and let's talk. And remember, scale isn't just about speed, it's about people. Until next time, have a great one.